Thank you for clicking in too. Explore the far-reaching impacts of the choices we make, one conversation at a time. This is The Ripple Effect. Today on The Ripple Effect, we have Jeffery Seib. He's running for city council. We want to go ahead and cover a little bit about his story so we can get to understand if he's a good candidate for you to vote for in the upcoming elections. We think it's important for you to go ahead and vote in these local elections just as much as you are voting in the federal election, because the local elections have a big impact on your daily life. With that, I want to go ahead and turn this over to Jeffery so he can tell us a little bit about himself and why he's the best candidate for you to vote for in the upcoming election.
Hello, and I want to thank you folks for giving me the opportunity to come on and speak. My name is Jeffery Seib. I'm running for the Palm Coast City Council because I believe there is a better way to run the city. I've been involved with Palm Coast since before it was a city, when I moved here with my wife and family in 1995. My parents retired here in 1978, so I've had a long association with Palm Coast. At that time, Palm Coast was not a city, it was a service district. And when I moved here in 1995, I started attending the meetings of the Palm Coast Service District Advisory Council. It was a group of citizens that the county commissioners had selected that would be essentially a de facto city council for the service district of Palm Coast. I applied, went to the meetings, and then in 1997 there was an opening, so I applied and I was appointed because they wanted an environmental person on the advisory council. And they gave me the job of being in the environmental committee of the Palm Coast Service District Advisory Council. We did deal with many of the issues that we have in place right now. Many of the regulations for the city were something that we proposed at that time. As the environmental, I was involved with several issues, and I worked with some of the founders of the city, like Jim Holland and Ralph Carter and Dick Eggers and a number of the folks. I also worked with Jerry Full to get the abandoned Lehigh Valley Railroad tracks converted into the Rails to Trails program, which is now what they call the Lehigh Trail. It's one of the most beautiful
which I use
trails.
often. I use almost every day.
Beautiful trail.
Yes,
it's one of the most beautiful in the city. That's because it was this abandoned rail right-of-way, and they used it for the cement plant, is what it was being used for, to haul in the materials and haul everything out. But after that, I was living in the city, and I from 2001 to 2011, my wife and I took care of my mother, who had suffered a stroke. And she actually lived with us in our home. At that time, I was working at the University of Florida, and I had to commute back and forth to the university, to Gainesville, every day here because I had to be there for my mother. And that was one of the things that I truly believe in, and I think it's my parents that gave me this idea of what responsibility is, and that you stand up for your responsibility and family's responsibility. So after my mom passed away in 2011, I retired from the University of Florida after 25 years. In 2014, I applied for and was accepted onto the city's Beautification and Environmental Advisory Committee. And I served 2 4-year terms. The second term, I was committee chairperson. We have a number of accomplishments that we did. We maybe will go into that, just give the brief synopsis of what I've been doing since then. In 2022, when I left the Beautification Committee, I began attending and speaking out at the city council meetings, and I've spoken out used my research abilities to research the issues and spoken out to the city council on the issues over 50 times. And that's what I'm doing right now. As I said prior, I spoke out last Tuesday on this election and on the city budget, some of the items on the budget that they just passed. Because I was at the Tiger Bay Forum on that Wednesday when they passed the final city budget. I'm a fiscal conservative. I have run a grassroots, low-budget campaign because I truly believe that money shouldn't buy a position, that the words and actions and beliefs, they should achieve that position. My policy for the city is what I call beautiful and livable. Beautiful in that we want to retain some of these beautiful green and open spaces that we have. And that's a draw. That's a draw for everybody. Businesses want that. The talent that comes with those businesses, they want a city like that, a green city, a beautiful city, with many of the amenities that cities have. And also livable in that we have the infrastructure in place. We have the housing. We have the jobs that have good pay for our young people. And we have recreation and entertainment and education options for all ages.
Yeah, Palm Coast is definitely beautiful. I haven't seen too many cities that are upkept and manicured like Palm Coast, or some of the fixtures that Palm Coast has. I do think that some of the design is needs some work and so forth. There's a lot of congestion in different places.
Yes,
especially on Old Kings. I think that needs to be expanded. I think they've talked about it. I don't know why what's your opinion on them building the road in West Palm Coast opposed to like fixing Old Kings and some of the other things?
Well, I think the road infrastructure is extremely important because that's how people get around. And nobody wants to be stuck in a traffic jam driving all over town. And especially as our population grows, we are essentially a driving community. So most folks will be on the road. I am on the road when I go to the city council meetings at 5:30. The council meetings are at 6. I'm on State Road 100. And it's just backed up, and you look at the traffic light at Seminole Woods, and it's as far as you can see, there's cars wanting to turn on. So I was somewhat surprised that the city is repaving it now and didn't add a third lane. But I agree that Old Kings, it was set up for being turned into like Belterre. Many years ago, you can drive on and you see this wide open area if you're going north, it would be on the right-hand side. That was where they were going to put in the other 2 lanes with a median, just like, and poof, it disappeared into thin air, the idea.
So we've seen that between DeSantos and the other state representative in charge, that we've got a lot of government funding the last couple of years, especially, but that's all probably going to change in the near future, and we lost that opportunity. Don't you feel that that's possibly the case?
I do feel it's possibly the case, especially since our representative, Paul Renner, was in charge of the state Senate for this last year. And he's the one who got us this $105 million appropriation for the Loop Road, the Western Loop Road extension. That is a subject that I discussed with the city council of how that road received the $105 million and our requests for a YMCA, for stormwater management, for a waste management treatment plant got vetoed. So it was a little suspicious of mine, and I was asking who put that at the top of the list. And to date, no one has taken credit for putting it at the top of the list. They had the lobbyist. We have a hired state lobbyist, a nice young lady, and she very intelligent, and she didn't discuss how it got placed at the top of the list. But that's what we have right now. Is we have this honor. So yes, we're going to be probably less funded in the future with a representative from, say, Pasco County or Pinellas County. They'll be looking out for their county's interests, say, more than
and just
they
to
were.
stay on that Matanzas loop for just a second.
Sure.
Right now, that area is zoned for family homes and multifamily homes.
Yes.
And right now, because housing prices are falling here, and we have about 2,000 homes in Palm Coast that are currently up for sale. You could say we have a glut of homes for sale.
Yes.
Why are we building a road in the middle of basically nowhere, right at this point, when it doesn't seem like it's really necessary now with what we have in the market?
Well, I think that there is a demand among possibly the landowners that are in the area that own that. This development that you're talking about is called Niagara Lakes, and that has been on the books for probably 20 to 25 years. And this is an issue that I have brought up also with the city council is how can we be allowing a development order to be enforced from 20 to 25 years ago. They've done this already with another development south. The development, I think it's called the Cascades. It's next to the Polo Club of Flagler Beach, where the Polo development has one home per 5 acres, and they want to put in 4 homes per acre, and they were saying the city staff had said this is compatible because there's a regulation in the Land Development Code that says that new development must be compatible with already existing developments. But back to the Loop Road, I think that this has been around for a while. I spoke to them over 2 years ago and to ask the city council to hold off on that loop road till we get our infrastructure in place here, till we get the YMCA, till we get all the amenities that we would want to make this a really the beautification with the green spaces, to make this a beautiful community before spending money out there. But as it happens with many times the public speaking, they can take it or leave it.
Now, it was interesting that you said a couple of minutes ago that at the top of the list was the funding for this Matanzas Loop.
Yes.
Do you think that something else, meaning the infrastructure, those type of appropriations could have been put at the top of the list as opposed to that?
Yes, certainly. I think they should have been put at the top of the list as opposed to that, because that's what we need right now. We are struggling with the infrastructure, the roads. We could use some state appropriation to widen the roads. We could have used the YMCA. We need the kids. They need new sport fields. The sport fields are wearing out because not just the kids, but there's adult leagues also that play on them. And this is our recreation component. And this is something that people think of recreation. Oh, it's something that it's nobody or certain people use it, and that's it. That's all it's good for. But if you look at the great communities that bring in good economic development, that's what we're talking a lot about now, is wanting to get more jobs into the community, more buildings, more development, and more business development. The talent that comes with that, they look at the community amenities, the total community, and they want to see these things. So this is something that I think it's not like it's just worthless or it's just for us or just for the kids. It's for they want their kids to go there.
Well, this begs the question: who makes the list?
Well, that's what was asked, and I couldn't name names because I don't know for a fact. So, but the list was put together. I looked at the list, and it was just a general list of items. It wasn't at the top of the list. Somewhere between when it left Palm Coast and arrived in Tallahassee, it was put at the top of the list. So that's something that I don't know if we'll get to the bottom of that, but we have to go with what we have right now.
Yeah, and what was interesting also that you said that improving our tax base. Right now the tax base is 90% residential. Very small is
Right.
corporate and or small business.
Yes.
Now, if you're looking at expanding into this Matanzas Loop, I don't know the official area, you said the name, the westward expansion, maybe
Right.
That's what they're calling it.
Loop Road.
And it's only zoned for housing and multifamily. That throws that balance way off. So the question I had to you is that, I read you were given a survey in the primary, before the primary, and you filled it out. And you said one of your concerns was getting, as you just said, more businesses in here.
Yes.
And because one of your concerns was kids growing up and leaving, and the people that live here majority of them don't work here. They leave here to go to work because there's not enough good jobs and in what would you call that, competitive wages.
Right.
What are you looking at to change that if you could?
Well, I think that's a policy that the city council, from what my listening to the other candidates speak, we're all pretty much lined up on this, that we want to try to maybe not necessarily level, but on a long-term plan of bring up the commercial development to more than just 7 or something percent is what they pay. As the homeowners in our property taxes, we pay 93%. And the way that I think that we can do that, now you were talking about the Loop Road extension, but those are what they call development of regional impact. And now they want to change it to a master plan development. But they do include commercial, and they do include a lot of economic development in those places. So
in that new westward expansion area.
In that new Niagara Lakes development. Okay. It does include both commercial, residential, multifamily. It's a huge development. It could double the size of Palm Coast.
Because that was my next question. Actually here in Palm Coast, do we have areas zoned for light industry or manufacturing? Large tracts of land?
Yes, we do. On Hargrave Grade, if you know that area is zoned for industrial, and there is right in that whole entire area, it is zoned for industry, and it's way underused. That's where I was over there not too long ago, and we had talked about there is a rail spur that comes off this, not the Lehigh Valley, the Texas Southern, I think it is, railroad that operates on the west north-south route. It has a spur that is already in place at Hargrave Grade. That would be ideal to bring in like logistics or warehousing or some kind of light industry or manufacturing. We also have at the end of Pine Lakes Parkway, there is a industrial area right by Palm Coast Parkway that we have an industrial area there that's underused. So we can do that. And the western side of US 1 would be perfect. I mean, right at Palm Coast Parkway, the plan was that not Advent Health, but the other hospital corporation was going to build a hospital at the end of Palm Coast Parkway. Advent Health beat them to it on building the one that they did on Palm Coast Parkway, but that was the plan. So that area is zoned more than just multifamily.
And we're starting to see a little bit of that, like you said, on, I think call it Moody Boulevard. That's US, what is it, 100?
Yes.
Okay, we're starting to see that.
Yes.
BJ's came in.
Yes.
I think and other things, the steakhouse and the ale house and the bank is also supposed to go in that area as well. What do you think is a good fit for Palm Coast, like tech companies, manufacturing, Space Force?
Well, I think it can be a range of things. You got to look at what the need is in the 21st century, and what the need. A lot of medical careers. I mean, that is something. Pharmacy techs, they don't require a 4-year degree. These are things that we will be looking at now. We have a VOTech school here in Palm Coast, and they have an electrician apprentice program. That is a great job. Plumbers, great job. Carpenters, great job. These are auto mechanics. These are great jobs that pay good, and you get with the right, you can have benefits also. As far as the technical, well, we could look at IT. We could look at robotics. We could look at logistics, as I said. We could look at medical careers, nursing careers. Medical could be a big thing. These are some of the areas I think we can look into for the jobs of the 21st century. But if we could, when Ron DeSantis, governor, was our representative, he was our district representative in Washington, I wrote to him several times about issues, but I wrote to him one time about, as you drive north on 95, you get close up by St. Augustine, and you look to the left as you're going north, and you see the Caterpillar building, with the Caterpillar office building and the plant behind it. And I asked Governor DeSantis, or Representative DeSantis at that time, hey, why don't you get us one of those? It's a perfect size. Those are good paying jobs. And that's what we could use here in Flagler County. I didn't speak of it. Now, we could get a Mercedes plant. We could get a Toyota plant. But that involves everybody on board, including the state, because that's what happened in, I guess it was Alabama and Tennessee, where they did give them the plant. They gave them lifetime, gave them free land, no taxes for a lifetime. But when you think of the jobs that come in and the paychecks that go out, the folks in the local community, they're working there, They got a paycheck. Well, they don't. They go other places, but we want to keep them here to spend that money, and that will really uplift the businesses and make it better for all of us.
And also in that Flagler County Buzz questionnaire you filled out, you also, and I think we may have covered it. You said you had concerns about the appropriations process. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, I was concerned with what we just discussed.
Okay.
How did it get bumped up to the top of the list, and how do they prioritize what we wanted? I mean, I would have thought that the why was right up. Well, even more so, the water treatment plants, the wastewater treatment plant, the stormwater improvements. I think those are something that we need critical right now with our infrastructure. We need to get going on that.
Are you talking about the fresh and saltwater canals being dredged?
I'm talking about that. I'm talking about the swales.
Right.
The swale ITT designed Palm Coast in the late 1960s. So it was designed with late 1960s forward thinking. Well, we're a little bit beyond that now. This swales idea was a relatively new concept at that time. What they did in most cities was gutters and drain pipes, and drains out. So they put the swale idea. The swales work when they're done correctly, when everything is working properly. Many of our areas in town, it's not working properly. Drive around when it's raining and you can see the flooding that exists in many of the streets in town.
Doesn't reside very fast either.
No,
Stays
well,
there for days.
It's got to run off, and this is a concern of mine. And from an environmental standpoint, we just have had in our country one of the worst storms we have ever seen. This storm is going to go down in the books, possibly worse than Katrina that hit the South Florida area or hit New Orleans. And Andrew was the hurricane that hit South Florida. I mean, this is it's really sad to me that we're not addressing the climate change and sea level rise. And I hope that we can get into that as if I am selected by the voters to be on the city council.
So your suggestion is that these swales and the ditches that are currently here right now, we're seeing water build up. They need to be fixed.
Right.
Now, is it a patch proposal, or do you think they totally need to be fixed across the board?
I think they need to be redone across the board because as I drive around, I see it so unevenly. The older homes, the swales have filled in. A new home is dug out. The water sits. We need to have this system in top rate. And it was something like the saltwater canals. I spoke to the city council regarding the freshwater canals also, that we need to. They have had no attention in the past 50 years either. So they are silted in to a certain extent. Plus, they have, what I mentioned to the city council when I spoke of the freshwater canals, I called it the flow and the look. The flow of the canals is so important that we have that drainage to get that water out from the home, from right in front of your home, out. And the look is the appearance of the canal, that it has to be something of a natural beauty. It can't just be like an open sewer pit. That's not what anybody bargained for, and that's not what many folks live on the canals. And also all the aquatic organisms that live there, they would be much happier.
Yeah, the proposal from I think Taylor Engineering, was it?
Yes.
They came out and they
saltwater canals.
Yeah, saltwater canals. They said for the age, 50 years old, nothing's been done in 50 years, dredged or anything. They're not in that bad of condition. It could be a heck of a lot worse.
Could be.
But the ones that they're supposed to be like 6 to 8 feet, but
Yes.
there are ones that in the center are less than 6 feet, and there's like something like 13 miles of it of the 26 that needs to be dredged. And we're in phase. They just approved phase 2,
Yep.
which is kind of like $500,000 for the engineering, blah blah blah.
Study.
There was concern by Councilwoman
Pontieri.
Yes, Pontieri, that I didn't understand, and maybe you can clarify this. That let's say we allow this, okay? Phase 2 comes. Are we locked into a contract with you for the actual work? Like if it comes out to be, it's projected to be 13 to 20 million, somewhere in
Right.
there. What was her concern about that? That are we right now? Are we locked into a contract with them to do that work?
No, No, right now we are just in. They are only hired as a consulting firm. All they're going to do is give us an idea of what it would take. We could still go out when they come back with that, with go out for bids to who may be able to do the job on a cheaper level than what they're calling for. But I think this is something that we've neglected for a long, long time. My beautification committee, the beautification committee, was the first to alert the city to the saltwater canal silting problem. We alerted them prior to the pandemic, and they said to us, "We're not dealing with that now." That's what they said to our committee. And now it has languished for all these years, where more silt is built up. In addition, I have stressed when the Taylor, I wasn't at this last one where they talked about it because I was at the forum, the Tiger Bay Forum, but when they brought the proposal first off, Taylor Engineering, I stressed to the engineering firm and the city council that this silt, this muck, must be tested for the presence of hazardous waste material. At the University of Florida, I was in charge of radioactive and hazardous waste management for our department. I had to be certified every year in this. We had regulations all over the place. The university, the state, the feds, they're all regulations, and they could drop in at any time and do a spot inspection. So we were up on that constantly, and I know hazardous waste and chloroforms, automobile oils, the fertilizers and the pesticides that have been poured into that canal for 50 years. I stressed to him that he said we did 5 samples in the entire 26 miles, I believe, that there is of the saltwater canals. 5 samples, and they came up all okay. Well, you have to do 5 samples every half mile to really have a scientifically accurate sampling mechanism. And from there, it's got to go to a testing lab that will determine what is in that muck, because it can't be used as a landfill if it's hazardous material. And that raises the price way up, because the only thing you can do is cart it to these incinerators that they have to burn this stuff, these hazardous materials out of it, with the giant smokestacks and all that. My gentleman was telling me there was one in Arizona. So I don't know if there's any in Florida or not. I don't know. But this is what would have to happen as we go forward with that, even on this limited scale. And I will insist on that, because we don't want to. When I grew up in New Jersey, and there was a big story. Perhaps you've heard of it. It was called Love Canal. There was a place in New York where a company that was manufacturing hazardous materials dug a ditch. This was before there was an EPA. This is way back when. They deposited all their waste material into this ditch. Well, they moved out, sold the land. A company came in and filled it in and built homes on the property. 5 years after the homes are occupied, they're starting to see incidents of leukemia, incidences of different type of cancers, all traced to these hazardous materials. It's called Love Canal. So I don't want us to be involved with that at all. I'm sensitive about that. In Gainesville, the Koppers Company had a creosoting plant for telephone poles. The same way, they poured their waste into what they call Hogtown Creek. It's the city's main waterway. That is a Superfund area, is what they call. The feds have taken it over and have to dig out a certain distance down, removing all the soil because it's contaminated. The same procedure that I'm saying that we must test for to ensure that isn't present.
So I see 2 things going on here. Right now, phase 1 is done, which was just basically the consultation from Taylor Engineering.
There is an issue.
There is a need, okay, which is the lower than 6 feet in the center of some of the canals and what have you. And then phase 2 was just approved, which is they're going to put together a engineering prospectus to see what needs to be done.
Right.
this is all costing like $500,000. Now
Yes.
the concern is that the town pays all this money, and it comes out, and they're going to give us Taylor Engineering is going to give us a quote for the cost, right?
Right.
Whether or not the mitigation of any type of contaminated soils is in it, I don't know, what you just suggested. But the concern is that they come out with, let's say, what is projected to be a $13-20 million job. They come out with a $40 million projection.
Yes.
The concern is that that's way too high, and we wouldn't do it, or we could get bids from somebody else and go much lower. I'm not following what the concern is. And if it is $40 million and we went out and we got other bids and it came out to be $25-30 million, is this a project that could be scrapped, or it has to be done? How is the city looking at this?
Well, that it's been an issue for quite some time, and certainly the canal homeowners are very concerned about it. And when Palm Coast was first established, that was one of the first areas to be built, and that was one of the draws for Palm Coast, was that it has these beautiful saltwater canals where you put your dock and you head out to the intercoastal and you go up to St. Augustine or wherever you want, and it's wonderful. So it is an amenity. When they were talking about this, they researched possible funding resources for the city and found that nobody wants to pitch in. The Corps of Engineers, the State DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, the St. Johns River Water Management District, the Florida, the FIND, F-I-N-D, Florida Intercoastal Navigational District, they weren't pitching in. We have no sources of funding.
Because they say it's not that bad.
Well, no, that wasn't the reason. The reason was they said it's a closed system. It's not. It's only for the residents of that area.
And so, okay, I want to say this question before we lose track of this. If it is only for the residents that in that area, and those residents get to look at that nice picturesque scene, those residents get to walk in their backyard, walk on their decks, fish off their decks, or jump on their boats, go for a ride.
Yes.
Why should anybody else in this community be paying for that? Because we don't get to see it. I don't have access to a backyard and a boat. I don't get to fish in the water. So I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yes.
Why shouldn't that be a special tax to those people who live on those waterways to fix it?
Well, because the simple answer is they don't want it to be. They have said that it is a community asset because it is a draw. The homes are very expensive homes, and they are very elite areas where you have this access, and so they feel that it is a community asset.
You just said it's not.
But
these beautiful homes on this beautiful land, that has nothing to do with the larger community in this.
Well, that is not just me. That's what the DEP said. That's what the EPA said. That's what all these agencies said. That what they said was it's a closed system.
Okay.
They said that there is no public boat ramps. You can't launch a boat into the canal system. You can drive up into the canal system from the intercoastal. You can go in and look at the homes. But it's only for the folks in there. When they were looking into the funding, I proposed a 50-50 split of what's left. If we could get some federal or state or local funding, then what's left of that, what's left to be paid of that, say the DEP funded 50% of the job. What's left of that, I said it should be a 50-50 split between us, regular residents, and the homeowners, the canal homeowners, but they didn't like it either. But there's many issues that have to be dealt with prior to any silting going on. One of those, for example, when I saw on my tour, that's a resident came to the beautification committee and said that his boat's hitting bottom when he's out riding out to the intercoastal. And so I went out with a tour of the Intercoastal Canal with him at that time. And he showed me the areas, and there was the bottom. But he had talked about the fact that we need to, get it done as soon as possible because it's always going to get even worse. Now, the one thing that I did see also was the bulkheads. Those are the barrier on the back of the homes. They are called bulkheads. The grass goes to the edge, and there's a concrete bulkhead. many of the bulkheads are in disrepair. They're tilted over. They have allowed, you can see the depressions in the soil right by where silt is just pouring into the, muck and into the canal. So the city has, at the time of incorporation, declared that the bulkheads are the residents' responsibility, not the city. So that's a plan. Before any work is done on dredging, they're going to have that figured out as to what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Either if the residents are kind of balking at that, then we have to look at what can we do. Should we go through or not? They said the city would do it then, rebuild their bulkhead, but they would have to pay for it with a lien on their property, that type of thing. So these are some of the questions that have to be answered. So it's a long way from being a done deal, but I am happy that they are going forward with this second phase 2 of their Taylor Engineering. It seemed like a very reputable firm, and they seem to be doing a good job. But I just want to make sure that they are testing the soil in an adequate, statistically accurate number of samples.
So you said this has been going on for about 50 years. This hasn't been dredged. It hasn't been dealt with. So if it continues going like this, what are the possible outcomes of this?
Well, there are several outcomes, one of which concerns me greatly, and it has to do with what I was speaking about prior to this, and one of the things I'm concerned with, and that's climate change and sea level rise. Right now we saw this huge storm going straight into Tallahassee area, straight in there, raising the water levels in the communities over the tops of houses. Well, what's going to happen if we have a major hurricane barreling in on these canals that have little clearance now? What is going to happen to them? One can imagine what can happen. Excuse me, a storm surge of 5 feet at a high tide. There will be water in the backyards, if not worse, in many of those homes. So this is what we have to look forward to in the future. What are we going to do? We got to do something to do that, and that's why many are claiming that it is a community-wide issue. Also, is that it's a public safety issue in some regards, and I can see the value, the meaning of that, because that's important.
How is it a public safety issue if it's affecting the people who are not taking care of their bulkheads, as you said, and they're not willing to pay anything towards the area that they pretty much occupy? How does that affect the community if it floods into their houses because they didn't make it important to them?
Well, one way, if they have to evacuate, we have emergency personnel that are going to have to come in and take their life into their own hands to do that. Just like they said, if you're not out in some of these areas, they said if you're not out by 12 midnight tonight, you're on your own. We can't get in there, and this is what we saw. And who wants that? We don't want that for our community. So something has got to be done. And I just you look at the price tag and think of, as you said, how are we going to balance what we get for what we're going to have to pay?
Could this lead to the residents of those areas possibly leaving, and very difficult to find new people to occupy those residents for tax base if this isn't addressed?
I doubt it. They seem to be they're very luxury homes that are in that area, and they're very high-end homes. And they were talking recently when we were dealing with the property taxes. They pay a way higher share than many other of the places in town. Of their millage rate is way higher than what. Not the millage rate's the same, but what they pay from the millage rate is their appraised values are up there, possibly $1 million range. So it's and more. So that I don't think there'll be a surplus of homes for sale in that area, or people leaving that area. But I do think that it's something we're going to have to deal with as a community.
Speaking of funding different projects, where do you stand on Charter Amendment 1?
Now that is the referendum.
Yeah, that's continue to be on the ballot.
I spoke to, that was one of the things I spoke to the city council about last Tuesday's meeting. I said that I would like to see some information on how much the city could afford from the annual budget to pay for some of these things. Like what would be the size of the note that we would have to pay back from the city annual budget? What could we use reserves for this? Now,
when you say for this, are you speaking of
the borrowing limit to raise
Okay.
the borrowing limit for, say, a project?
Okay.
If we're
above 15 million?
Yes, 15 million was good, I guess, 20 years ago. But now, one of the controversies, they were talking about a company made a proposal about, I guess it's 3, 4, maybe 6 months ago, of a $93 million sports complex. They would have like 20 full-size sport fields. They would run it. We would pay for it, and we would run it, and they would give us a share. And this is what I know Councilman Danko was vehemently opposed to. So I think I don't like the idea either. I think we should keep our sport fields within our city park system. We have sport fields. Indian Trails right down the road here is used all the time by our kids. They need new sport fields. Our younger kids need, and older. They have adult flag football. They have lots of sports that go on. That's used every weekend. You see it. There's crowds there right now. Well, we need more of those sport fields. Ralph Carter Park was getting torn up because it was overused. So we need another sport field. I proposed the city utilize. They have a 100-acre tract on US 1. They call it. They don't call it Pueblo Grade. I forget. It's called something of that nature. On US 1, the city owns a 103-acre plot on US 1, north of Palm Coast Parkway, and they said that. I said they should use this for sport fields, build a new sports complex, including a community pool, because we need a community pool. I came from Gainesville. I lived there for 15 years. They had 3 city parks that had, plus the university, that had Olympic-sized 50-meter pools. You could go. These were city parks. Eastside Park and Westside Park were used extensively by people for recreational swimming, for training, for physical fitness. And swimming is a good activity for all of them. I think I had mentioned that my stepdaughter was using the Belterre Swim and Racket Club, as I did, and my mother did. When my mother was in the grips of her stroke-related dementia, I would bring her because she was always active. Maybe that's where I got my activity from. I'm sure it was. But she always active her entire life, and she was in Belterre Swim and Racket. Which has been around for forever. It was built by ITT. All the residents of Palm Coast at that time when my parents moved up here were given a free membership to Belterre Swim and Racket. I went there with my parents. It was just a little round building that's in the middle. There wasn't any gym building, and the pool. And I went to work out in a little tiny area. But it was good. It was good for what it was, and it still is good today. But we would go there to take my stepdaughter and for us to swim also, my wife and I. And it had the hydraulic lift, so she could get from her wheelchair, get into the chair, press the button, take it over the water's edge, and go right down in. Same way with getting out. And she'd be fluttering around, doggy paddling in the water, enjoying herself. This is what we need. We need this. When I got my COVID, when we had our COVID vaccinations, my wife and I went up to St. Augustine because Palm Coast was full at the time. We had our injections in St. Augustine at the park that's right off of US 1 in the back. They built a new high school. What they did was they kept the auditorium or the basketball court building from the old high school. And there were rooms where they had ceramic classes and different classes, Pilates classes. They had a full court, basketball court. They had basketball. Right, this was in February. And we looked out as we were sitting around for the 15 minutes we had to sit, make sure we were going to take the reaction okay. There were folks swimming at the heated pool, 50-meter Olympic pool in St. Augustine. They had their robes. They got out of the water, put the robe on, and went off. They were doing their lap swim, their health swim. And that's what we need. We should have that. And that's why I was pushing them to include that in the YMCA package. But I also said what we should do is build out there on that US 1 site. Sport fields, we'd have room for a building with a community pool and plenty of sport fields, and we would run it just like we run Indian trails.
Right, and so the discussion right now is in addressing what you mentioned, this $93 million sports complex.
Yes.
If the city can't get any type of appropriations, either federally or state, going back to this new
the
referendum,
yes,
then the city could, if we got rid of that, okay, the $15 million cap and the 3-year repayment, that means the city could fund that some other way, maybe floating some bonds or some other way.
Yes.
And that's what they're proposing, because right now having that $15 million cap kind of handcuffs you a little bit, and like you said,
yes,
maybe it was appropriate 20 years ago, but now
yes,
nothing can be built for $15 million.
No.
So do you agree with that amendment?
Well, I would like to see more information on how we could work the finances in the city, because we have a large amount of money in our reserve account, which is more than what's required to have.
20 million.
Right.
Million.
And the accounting expert for the city said that we only are required to have $6 million, I believe it was.
Mm.
So we have some excess there. I do think that to do some of these large expenditures, we may need to borrow more than $15 million. But I think that this amendment also included the fact that the city can do this, city council can do this on their own, whereas the current regulation is that it has to go in a referendum for the public to vote on. And I don't want the people to be giving up that right to vote on that.
Right.
Okay,
I think
so
the current one says that if it's over 15 million, you have to vote on it.
Yes.
And the new proposal is there's no more vote. The
Right.
council decides.
Right.
No limits.
Right.
No term for paying back.
That's
Which the current one says that you have 36 months to pay it back. So it has a lot of limits in there
Yes.
and stuff in there to protect any kind of gross use of money or debt occurred to the city, which we'll have to pay back as residents.
right.
So I think that the wording is really bad, and it should be, tailored.
Well,
What
we
is
don't
your
know where
opinion?
it's going right now because of the lawsuit
Right.
that's been filed on it.
So,
But it is on the ballot.
Okay, yeah, and not to put words in your mouth, but what you're kind of saying, or maybe what we're talking about here, is that maybe not get rid of it entirely, but maybe put it at, let's say, 90 million or 100 million is the cap for the city, but still, like you said, allow the residents, don't take that vote away from the residents, their right to dictate what their city should be spending, but raise the cap, because 15 million, you can't even purchase a fire station for 15 million anymore. So maybe raise it and then maybe extend the 36 months to maybe 72 months. Something like a happy medium. Is that what you're kind of suggesting?
I think that could be a solution. I think we'd have to look into it. But I do think, and I did speak with some firefighters about that very issue of the fact of the cost of fire stations, and they were very concerned about that because, fire department is one of the big expenses for the city's budget, is funding the fire department, and it's a good thing. We need to fund a well-trained and well-equipped and ready to go. These folks were talking about the fire stations. They're building one on Seminole Woods Boulevard, and right now the time from the airport is they want 7 minutes, is what they said to me, response time. So this is something that we'll have to look into. It's got to be things that will benefit the community, but I think that it is an item that we could look at and see if there is a need for that as we go forward. I I would not say a blanket yes or a blanket no. I don't like saying a blanket no to anything, but I think if we could design it in a way where the public would have their input and where we would get that kind of, if we need to buy some things, and they're more than $15 million, and we can't pay it back in the time period involved, we have to do it. That's what city governments do.
Yeah, and let's say this referendum passes. Are there? I have to think there are, but maybe you know better because you've been doing this since '97. Are there any checks and balances somewhere in any other city charter that actually says that says to the city council, you're no longer bound by that $50 million, but you just can't go spending $200 million without some sort of checks and balances? Does that actually exist, or does once you get rid of that, now as the city council have carte blanche to spend whatever it wants?
Well, I think if we don't put a cap on any amount that is on say a borrowing referendum, then I think they could go up to the top of it, and I would not vote to allow it to be only designated by the city council, that these still would have to be the public referendum. The public would have to vote on it. The public would have to buy in on what we're going to do that's going to cost a lot of money.
And right now, Alan Lowell's lawsuit, another resident popped up with another lawsuit. I think he was thrown out for the same thing. But it's unsure whether or not the circuit court's going to rule on that before or after the election. And there's concern that if it's before, it can cause confusion. Do you have any impression of this or where it's going?
Well, I think it's going to have to go through the courts, and we'll have to see what the judge's ruling is. But I think in the current form of the referendum, I would not be supporting it. I don't support it at this time, the referendum as it is written on the amendment right now.
Because one of two things is going to happen is either they're going to rule on it before the election, which means that somehow do you not count those ballots? If somebody puts in the box, yes, I agree with it. Now, is that ballot thrown away? How do you handle that?
I think that's exactly what happens if they rule that the referendum is incorrect or is not legally accurate, binding. Right? I think that would just be a exercise.
That's going to cause a lot of confusion. So
it is going to
hopefully that decision comes out after the election.
Well, already people have sent in their mail-in ballots, so people have voted for that already. Ballots came out on the 25th, I believe. Yeah. In fact, I know it because some people have already said to me that they have voted. They said they voted for me for the city council, so I was happy to hear that. But they also voted. I didn't ask them what their vote was on the referendum.
If you can you just leave it blank if you want to?
Sure, you can leave any ballot item blank if you're not sure or if you're unhappy with the candidates involved. You don't vote for that position. In fact, that was one of the items that caused them a little consternation in the recount that was made. Was the number of people that did not vote for either candidate in the primary election. They didn't vote for any candidate
County
in that.
commissioners.
It was the city council. It was the candidate that lost, Mark Stansell, that lost by 2 votes for the District 3. That was an item that there was a lot of no votes, just left blank. So if people feel that they're unhappy with something and are unsure, I would say that could be a blanket thing for everything. If you're unsure, completely unsure, don't take a guess when you're voting. I would say please don't take a guess.
Well, I actually asked that question for a reason because for those who are listening, if it's voted on or the circuit court makes a decision beforehand, and you want your ballot to count, and I'm just saying for me, I would walk up there and I would not check that box just to make sure my vote counted because you don't know where that's going to land. right? Because if the circuit court judge says, okay, it's that amendment is it's illegal or whatever they make a ruling on, and you check that box, and now that vote, your ballot, I'm not saying it does, I'm just saying now that ballot is invalid for whatever reason, that vote is gone. So,
Well, just the vote on that issue, not your entire ballot.
okay, that's what I'm getting at. I didn't.
Yeah, no. It's just that issue.
Okay, great.
Yeah, you can and leave any issue blank. And if you vote for a particular, the way it works is the scanner scans what you vote for, scans a little dot. It knows if you are voting for myself for city council, that little dot by my name is me. If there's nothing there, it just registers as that,
No vote.
as no vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it doesn't affect your overall voting on everything other.
Right.
It just affects the actual vote for that issue, and there are quite a few different issues on the ballot this year that people are
Quite a
very
few.
interested in.
Very interested.
So we'll have to see how that goes. I think, like you said, that a lot of people didn't vote on things is basically because they didn't even know what's going on. A lot of this stuff, like the wording for that amendment, is so vague. It's so vague, no one knows what it even means. I mean,
It has been that way with those amendments quite often, I have noticed over the years. But some of the amendments have been very purposeful, and they were looked at as being like a joke and all. And I can remember the one on pregnant pigs, if you remember that amendment. We're laughing at that right now, but you know it is a serious issue, and I as an animal lover, I am very upset at the treatment of many of our domestic animals, many of the animals that we are our food supply, and that amendment on the pregnant pigs was one of them. The care of the way that some of the agribusiness concerns were, if a pig was pregnant, they were put in a cage where they couldn't even turn around, and just a wire cage. And it was really, some of the treatment that we do is inhumane, to say the least. And that was one of them. And that was why the amendment came through on the proper treatment of pregnant pigs. Everybody was laughing at it, including myself, because I didn't understand what it was until I looked into it a little bit and saw that it had a very good meaning. So I voted for the amendment to allow different treatment of the pregnant pigs.
one thing I did want to cover before we close everything up was if you do make it to the council, if you get voted in as city council, you'll have to vote on the new incoming, applications and so forth for city manager.
Yes.
What are you looking for in a city manager?
Well, I think the city manager is, as we've seen, very important. What I would be looking for someone who has academic training in city planning methodologies. I would look for someone who has had some experience in a city or a comparable management environment to ours. I would look with someone who knows something about Palm Coast, someone who has the ability to troubleshoot, someone who has excellent communication skills, and someone who can adhere to the highest level of professionalism in their dealings with the public, with the city council, with staff, and with the business community, with everybody. I would look for someone who has a skill set of talent resources to move us into this economic development, knows what we can do, and knows that the folks coming in, the talent that would be coming in to get some of this talent, bring them in here and make sure our community has the amenities, the green spaces, the parks. That's what these folks want to come into a town. That's what they want in any town they come in. So that's the some of the things that I would be looking at in a city manager, someone who can get an economic development plan going that we all can agree with. We're talking about businesses, and that's what we want to do, is rebalance the scale.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, Jeffrey. If more people want to reach out to you, get to know more about you or about your campaign, how will they reach you?
They can go to my website, which is one word, Seib4city.com. They can go to my website, look there, and my email address of my campaign is Seib4city@yahoo.com. They can go to there, and look, and they would find all the information that they need to get in touch with me and send me an email, send me a text. Would be my text number would be on the
Website?
Website, yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for coming on. We want to state and clarify that we did offer Ty Miller the chance to come on as well, but Ty Miller was booked or decided not to come on. We want to thank Jeffrey for coming on, sharing about his campaign and what he wants to do and accomplish if he gets onto City Council. If you liked his comments and you liked his campaign ideas and his experience, please go ahead and reach out to Jeffrey or get more information. We thank you for watching. We hope that you will like and comment, and we look forward to seeing you in future videos as well. Thank you.